you, Darlene. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Focus Women 2022, the start of our virtual webinar series. I'm here with co-founder Darlene Lee of Focus Women. Darlene, do a little wave up there. Today we have a presentation by two women who've been a part of Focus Women community for some time. Just a quick note that this is recording. We ask you if you can please mute yourselves for the whole presentation. If you have a question for the first 30 minutes, please put that in the chat, which we're going to be moderating. If you would like to put this on speaker view, that would probably be helpful too, so you can see the main person speaking. And Darlene, I'm going to send it to you just to share a little bit more about Focus Women.
Terrific. And I apologize, I might be multitasking because I am bringing people in from our waiting room. So I want to say that good morning to everyone, first of all. In case you don't know, Aria and I have collaborated for many years, and we've decided to put a name behind our collaboration, which is called Focus Women. Focus Women supports and provides an opportunity for women in business with leadership and stakeholder roles to meet in enterprise. Our combined relationships cover a spectrum of industries and ownership structures. And we know each one of our connections, so do not hesitate to get a hold of any of myself or Aria for an introduction. What we want to do basically is have everybody use the LinkedIn group that we've established some time ago. And we've posted this event on there, and we hope to complete this recording and repost it onto Focus Women LinkedIn group. We encourage you to be part of joining us as a global team here through Focus Women. And thank you very much and enjoy today's presentation.
So we have today Runa and Jasmine, who are founders of Connectalent, which I'll pass this along to you. And thank you for this opportunity to learn about a great, really important topic for us, the future of women for work in 2022, the overall job market, and much more.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Aria and Darlene. I'm Jasmine Silver. I'm a co-founder and director of operations at Connectalent. I just wanted to quickly thank Aria and Darlene again for the intro and also just for creating Focus Women. I loved hearing a little bit of the backstory that you told just now, and I think it's such a great idea and such a useful platform and connector for professional women. So we're so happy to be here today speaking with you all and to be a part of this special network of women. I think we've all experienced to some degree, women in the workforce have unique challenges. And while our recruiting company, which we'll introduce in a little more detail in a few moments, while we help professional women in a different way than Focus Women does, we're both working towards that same goal, which is lifting women up, supporting each other. So we're just grateful for this collaboration. I started my career as a divorce litigator in New York City. When I was not offered any paid maternity leave when I had my young children, I decided to leave for a couple of years and spend some time at home with my young children. We moved out to Fairfield County from New York City, and initially I went back, part-time remotely, and it just wasn't a fit for my life at the time. It was the kind of position where 1 month I would get 100 hours of work. The next month it would be nothing. It was really difficult when it came to, childcare and planning. It just didn't fit. And, I really wanted to make an impact locally and find a job that worked for my life. My business partner, Runa Knapp, she is a CPA. She worked at KPMG for her entire career before she took some time off to be with her young children. We met when our sons were in preschool together. They're actually still friends. And we started having conversations about how there were no resources for professional women and mothers like us. We felt like there was a void of job-seeking avenues for, again, mothers like us who are eager to return to work, but also seeking a work-life balance. And in the careers that we had chosen, work-life balance wasn't a thing. So we created our recruiting company, Connectalent, and it's evolved into something bigger than, we both could have imagined at the time. And it's really exciting. Runa and I, we share a passion to serve others, particularly women. We love making meaningful connections. We enjoy helping women refine their resume and redefine their career goals. And we really enjoy working with corporate clients to increase diversity and inclusion on their teams. And we love giving talks like these and providing insight into what we're seeing in the industry. So I'll shoot it over to Runa now, who will speak with you all in a little more detail about how our recruiting company works. And then I will jump back in and start talking about some trends we're seeing for this year in hiring, both on the candidate side and on the employer side.
Thanks, Jasmine. Thank you again, Darlene and Aria, for having us for today. So just a little bit of background on our company. We have been in business coming up on 3 years now. We operate as a typical recruiting agency. We work with both the candidate and client side. Candidates join our network for free. Clients, they're looking for all different types of things. One thing we aren't specific on is industry. So we've worked with everything under the sun, marketing, law, finance, nonprofit, PR, small businesses, all over the arena. It really is our niche really is the female talent in Fairfield County, particularly a lot of mothers returning to the workforce. So, one thing I will say for any job seekers that are on this call, don't sign up to work exclusively with any one recruiter. We don't ask our candidates to work exclusively with us, just so you have the most options out there for your job seeking journey. On the client side, we'll help draft and review job descriptions, advise on staffing needs. A lot of times they come to us asking, what are you seeing in the market in terms of pay? So we'll give some, trends on that, sourcing and screening qualified candidates, and we support them throughout the whole interview process, both on the client and candidate side. Just a few statistics quickly, I'll keep this part brief. We have 92% of our placements have been women since we started. 84% of those have been mothers. We have grown beyond the East Coast, but still, I think that this particular area is truly unique, especially Fairfield County, because there's such a high concentration of highly educated women who are really looking to return to the workforce. And, later in this presentation, I'm going to touch upon different scenarios, whether you're looking to pivot, whether you're looking to return in a position that you were in 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, just kind of your best options for securing your next job that works for you. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jasmine to talk about what we've been seeing in 2022, end of 2021 in terms of job trades.
Thanks, Runa. We'll be switching back and forth a little bit so you don't have to listen to one of us talk for too long. So I'm going to discuss job trades, like I mentioned, and I also wanted to just let everyone know that what we discussed today is mainly based on our anecdotal observations and through our work the last 3 years. It's not necessarily based on studies or statistics or global trends, although of course there's overlap, and often what we see mirrors the trends that are happening more nationally or globally. But I just wanted to let you all know that these are kind of based on just what we're seeing with our company. So on the candidate side, I'd say there's a couple of categories that are in high demand, both right now and kind of historically over the past couple of years. I would say in the marketing, social media, and PR kind of world, we get a lot of small businesses who are looking for that jack of all trades person within the marketing, social media, or PR world. So someone who can do the strategy as well as execute. So, if you work in a role like that, you may be kind of doing tasks that you would have done years ago or that someone junior to you would normally do at a large company. But these small companies really want that kind of soup to nuts person that can do it all. So that's something to think about, if you wanted to up your social media training or something like that. In financial services, particularly operations and accounting, we see a number of roles. Sometimes we say we could just make a whole business out of, filling accounting roles. And legal, we get a number of law firms seeking paralegals, lawyers. We're also working with financial services companies that are also seeking paralegals or legal assistants. So those are always in high demand. And one thing we're seeing that's really encouraging are these financial or investment companies or law firms who are traditionally thought of as more old school and, into more face time and office time. They're really evolving, and, they're providing much more flexibility and more regular hours in years past. So, that's something that we're seeing also in that industry. and always administrative candidates. They, at companies, small, mid-sized to large, all industries always looking for a high quality, highly organized, self-starter administrative candidate. So that's another industry that we kind of just see all the time, looking for candidates. And then one thing we saw in 2021 specifically was an increased demand for seasonal or freelance workers, specifically in accounting, as we placed several seasonal candidates at a large accounting firm last year. And I think it's because so many industries got extra busy last year. They weren't sure if it would persist, given, kind of the volatility of the years before. And so they preferred to hire seasonal employees at first. And the candidates were excited about that. Sometimes seasonal or freelance opportunities can be a good way to dip your toe back into an industry at a similar level if you had previously left the industry without kind of that immediate full-time commitment. So those are a few trends that we've been seeing on the candidate side. Moving to the employer side, I would say we kind of broke it into 4 main trends that we're seeing for 2022 and beyond. Number 1, no surprise, I would say an increased reliance on technology to kind of make it all work. Runa and I have been reliant on Zoom for years now. It's been great, which, I had never heard of Zoom like 3 years ago, but now we're reliant on it. And, there's Slack and there's all sorts of, messaging and all different kinds of technology that companies are relying on. I'd say the next trend, as we discussed a little bit, is increased flexibility. Some examples that we're seeing are, we're working with 2 large companies right now that provide its employees a small local satellite office, so they don't have to waste those 4 hours each day commuting back and forth to the city. So that's a great example of flexibility. We're working with a small company that's splitting 1 full-time role into 2 part-time roles. We're working with a law firm who's seeking a lawyer to help remotely part-time. So that would be someone who's looking to kind of scale back or step back in from a break. A financial services company that gives its employees the option to structure their 8-hour work days in whatever way works for them. So, if you happen to have a late school drop off, you can go into the office at 9:30 and work till 5:30. If you happen to have an early daycare pickup, you work 8, you can leave at 4. They are trusting their employees to get the job done in the 8 hours that work best for them. We work with a number of companies that are offering its employees the option to work from home regularly, 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, a couple times a month. Anything is appreciated. And we're also working with companies that offer family-friendly benefits to their employees, like subsidized childcare or education. So those are some great examples of different ways that companies are incorporating flexibility, and they're getting, much higher quality candidates because of it. I'd say the third trend that we're seeing on the employer side is a real push to increase diversity. So companies that are actively trying to recruit and foster a diverse workplace, sometimes their first step is coming to us because they know, we have that diverse talent. We're known for our female talent in particular. And coming to us is really the first step, as well as acknowledging, we need more diversity on our team, or we want more diversity, or in some cases, our clients are demanding that we have, more women on our team or more diversity. So that's a trend we're seeing, is that more companies are coming to us with that specific goal in mind. And we think it's great. And one thing that we kind of encourage our clients to do when they say to us, we're looking for more diversity on our team, is we say, okay, well, I think maybe you need to broaden your requirements a bit and think about interviewing a more out of the box candidate, we would call it. So, whether that's a mother who's returning to the workforce who hasn't worked for several years and, it's a resume that they may have passed over in the past, or it's a candidate in a parallel industry who's looking to pivot, but it's clear that, they can get the job done and they have the proper skill set. It's just not in that exact industry. So, well, first of all, this push for diversity is good for these pivot candidates, because if you are looking to switch, companies are a little bit more open to, like I said, broadening their requirements. And also working with a recruiting company like us can help, because we can kind of connect the dots for employers. Whereas, if you just sent your resume, they may say, oh, this doesn't make sense. This person hasn't worked in 3 years, or this doesn't make sense. They've never worked in this industry. And we can kind of say, to the employer, you know, if you don't want to hire a carbon copy of everybody else that's on your team right now, you have to just broaden it a little bit and take a look at this candidate. So those are some trends that we're seeing on the employer side. And one last trend we're seeing is that employers are more often now listening to their employees and really trying to, you know, make it work. Again, you know, companies that required their employees to be full-time in office in mid-2020 listened to their employees and thought, you know, okay, they need this flexibility, or they need this, you know, additional provision. We're going to listen to them and give it to them. Otherwise, you know, they may leave. So that is definitely a trend we're seeing also, which I think is great. And, you know, fingers crossed that in a few years, these 4 trends I mentioned, technology, flexibility, diversity, listening to your employees, I hope they're the workplace norm, you know, rather than these kind of novel concepts that we're still trying to convince companies to implement. But Runa and I are very encouraged by the conscious effort we see so many companies making now to ensure that these concepts are a reality in their workplace. So before I send it over to Runa, I just figured while we're discussing trends and what we're seeing in hiring, 2 roles that we're seeking to fill right now. One is a part-time operations / HR, a little bit of office management for a local marketing agency. It's about $40 an hour, 2 days a week. And we're also seeking a full-time marketing associate for an asset management firm in Greenwich. Compensation is about $100K. It's a hybrid arrangement, and the hours are, you know, approximately 9 to 5. So if you know anyone, or if you know, may be interested in learning more about this, please feel free to reach out to us by email and connect. Go ahead, Runa.
Can I jump in for 1 second with a question?
Go ahead.
Of course.
So are you seeing a lot more women with the pandemic deciding, hey, you know, this kind of worked before, but now I've been home with my kids more. I don't think this is ideal for me. Maybe my employer is still trying to keep me in the office. They're not as flexible. Maybe I want to pivot what I'm doing. Do you think people are starting to, in the last 2 years, have decided they want to pivot and change their career path? And, you know, are you able to help coach with that to get them new positions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going into a whole kind of different scenarios for when you are in that, you know, situation where you do want to pivot and don't want to go back to where you, you know, left the workforce. So, you know, just I'll touch on that right now. Just, you know, workforce reentry, how can women best position themselves when re-entering, when to pivot, when to look for a new job? I think a lot of it is very personal. When you do need to pivot, if it's not working for you, work-life balance, and you just want to be home with your kids more, that might be the right time to pivot. It could be a lot of different reasons. You could realize all of a sudden you no longer want to be an accountant and you want to go do recruiting. So, you know, there's a lot of different reasons, very personal, but, you know, just a few notes on that. If you don't want to return to the workforce, you know, in the same environment you left it, I think your best option, and I think everyone kind of cringes at this word, is networking. This is a great opportunity here. We're all networking. It really is the single best avenue, especially when you're not working with a recruiter, you're doing this job seeking on your own. Tap into your professional and personal networks. Jasmine and I have booked radio show gigs because of a talk she had with a parent at a soccer game for her kid. So, you know, it's very important. No networking is too small. I mean, it's kind of, you know, it is tough when you're kind of pushing your own agenda, but that's kind of how everybody finds the positions that work best for them. So I will say number 1 is network. Number 2, and the younger generation is really driving this right now, is finding a company you're passionate about. So it's not just going to the office, making a ton of money, and that's it. Now, candidates more often than not are really trying to get behind a company with a mission that excites them. And on that note, we've had quite a few pivoters in our network. For example, pre-COVID, this actually happened right around COVID. A woman in our network was in the hospitality industry. That industry took a huge hit. She was doing nothing close to what she ended up getting a job for, and that was at a nonprofit she was very passionate about. Nonprofits are great if you can get behind that, because oftentimes they can't afford to hire a full-time employee. They might bring someone on part-time if that's what you're looking for. And you know, I think a lot of people find their causes and their passion in that arena. The other one, you know, I have another example of a situation where we had a candidate who was a head of HR and ops at Amy's Bread. She ended up becoming a very successful consultant at a company that supports benefit corporations. So, you know, if you can't, you know, if you're struggling with where do I go back into the workforce, what's going to work for me, think about it. You know, it's all personal, of course, but think about what is it that excites you? What is it that you want to, what type of company do you want to get behind? And that's really where you can start. The other thing I would say, let's say you want to do a more corporate job. A lot of what we're finding and a lot of placements we've recently made are very technical based, in that technical skills that you can pick up on your own. So for example, we had a advisory company recently in the fall come to us asking for somebody with Salesforce experience. Our candidate hadn't worked in 7 years, took it upon herself to educate herself in Salesforce, got accredited for the highest Salesforce certification, and she got the job. So, you know, you could do things. Salesforce is one of them. We're seeing even actually the one Jasmine just spoke to, the marketing associate, their only requirement is that you have advanced Microsoft Office Suite skills. So Excel and PowerPoint. So if you go and you don't have it today, you can go take lessons online and educate yourself in that arena. That's, you know, clients are really looking for these kinds of things. Another one is QuickBooks. Another huge opportunity there. We've had, that's a very high demand job in general. Like Jasmine said, accounting is always wanted. We also had a candidate who left a hedge fund as the head of ops, and she went and, you know, wanted to be home with her kid and said, okay, I'm just going to take some QuickBooks classes, became a certified pro in QuickBooks. And now all she does is take on clients to help them through their accounting. So you know, there's several tools out there. I think the marketing generation, there has been quite a few women who have like fallen behind in that realm because so much has changed in that arena. So that's another one that you can educate yourself on and try to go for those types of positions. So Aria, that answers your first question for when you don't want to go back to what you were in. If you do want to go back to what you were doing 5 or 10, let's say 5 or 10 years ago, again, I'm going to go back to the fact that you need to network with old colleagues, up your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn is something we use on a regular basis. I'll say I skip over people who don't have LinkedIn pictures or who have selfies in their car. I just keep it professional. You know, I think that's also another great avenue. You take the 2 to 3 months, invest in that time to increasing your connections. Try to get some old colleagues to provide you some endorsements for skills or testimonials that you can show on your LinkedIn page, and then look for jobs that way. You know, I know sometimes it does get difficult because you'll be applying blindly to different positions, but you can tailor your resume accordingly to get some hits. And if you have a great LinkedIn profile, recruiters will reach out to you 100%. So I think that's a really good, you know, really good pointer in terms of your job search. And with that, I am going to turn it back over to Jasmine, and I'm sure there's some questions out there we'd be happy to answer, but Jasmine, if you want to take it.
Yeah, sure. Before we take a few questions, we just wanted to thank you all for listening today. You know, along the lines of Runa's networking tips, we love making connections locally all around the country with other women, either as candidates, clients, or as partners. We enjoy doing talks and events like this. We're happy to collaborate with complementary women-focused companies. So, you know, please follow us, reach out to us on social media, email just to say hello or to inquire about a job, see if we can help you as a client or a candidate. And thank you again for listening. We hope you found it interesting. And, I'm sure there's a few questions and we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you both. We really appreciate it. Thank you for all the tips. If anyone has any questions, you can unmute yourself now. So I know I've had a couple of questions come in before, so I'm going to throw those out there for you real quick. How do you think the Generation X or younger workforce or kind of great resignation shifts could impact women looking to return to the workforce or stay in their current position?
Yeah, I feel like that's a great question. It's something Runa touched on a little bit when she mentioned, the younger generation is, pretty assertive when it comes to corporate values and kind of following their passions. And so, first of all, we speak a lot about flexibility, but there are other ways for, employers to attract women. And I think it needs to be pointed out that there's other factors at play. There's disproportionate burdens at home and housekeeping and childcare, and the list goes on. And I feel like the pandemic certainly highlighted these issues. And I think this younger generation of Gen Zers, I guess we call them, they're really good at, calling out these kinds of inequities and demanding change and kind of standing up for the workplace that they want to be in. And I think that actually only helps women and mothers because, if we're a little bit older and we're not used to that kind of assertive, tell your bosses how you want the workplace to be nature, I think it helps that this new generation is very passionate about that. And then I think you also mentioned the Great Resignation, and similarly, I guess the Great Resignation is kind of a recent term for people who are leaving the workforce either during the pandemic or kind of more recently, for, like Aria, you mentioned, to either pivot to a new industry or they just can't take the hours anymore. I think that's actually been really instrumental in affecting change because it showed employers that, employees, can leave for greener pastures if the company doesn't step up and provide, some flexibility or provide, some kind of ways to keep its employees. So I think both movements, the Great Resignation and kind of that younger generation, have been really interesting to watch and also really helpful to women and mothers in kind of creating the workplace where we can all thrive.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. I know our law firm has had to pivot too, even things down to changing your maternity policy. Things have been set in stone for a long time, but then you have a different crowd coming in, and that's something that we have to change to be more attractive to different candidates coming in as well.
Yeah, I will say that
so true.
Add the number, the conversations we were having with clients pre-pandemic are very different than what we're having now, which is great for our candidate pool. But it was almost like very dismissive in the beginning, like, no, this is not going to work. If I make it work for one person, I have to make it work for everybody. But now they're making it work for everybody, which is great.
Do you think the work from home is going to stay in the endemic when we get there?
we get the question all the time, and we wonder ourselves, but I mean, I think in short, yes, I think it's here to stay in some way, shape, or form. I think employers now know it can work. I think they realize that it helps retain good employees and attract good employees. I think we know now that it can increase diversity. And, in a lot of roles, we're seeing higher quality and more candidates with remote or hybrid roles, whether it's, mothers who otherwise wouldn't work if it weren't a hybrid role, or, if it's a completely remote role, you can source outside of your local bubble, which can sometimes get you, a different quality candidate. So yes, I think it's here to stay in some way. I hope so, because I think it's a really positive change.
So I'm gonna put myself in I'm looking for a job right now. And I've applied to numerous jobs online and haven't heard back. Is there anything that I could do differently, do better?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a struggle a lot of candidates have. And I think, there's a couple of things here. So I touched upon this earlier in terms of making sure your LinkedIn profile is showing your best self. I think on the other end of it is you shouldn't just be applying blindly, apply for positions that make sense to you and what you want. And the biggest thing we tell our candidates is make sure that when you're applying for a particular position, you're tailoring your resume each time. I know that's a lot of work, but really that is so important, because oftentimes if there is a human there on the other side of it and they're seeing a resume come in and they just can't make sense of how does this even, how does this make sense at all? In that situation, had you pulled some of the keywords from the job description and made sure you had it into your resume, that gives you a better chance. On the flip side, there's something called the applicant tracking system, which a lot of these bigger corporations have. So when you're putting your resume through a big corporation general database, you're probably getting lost in the shuffle if you haven't made sure that ATS, or applicant tracking system, is going to pull up these keywords. So again, same scenario there. You should have updated your resume to more closely match the job description to the extent you've actually done those job responsibilities. So that's the biggest point there.
Do you think it's a benefit to filter your resume through a company like yours, for example? I know, because we've worked together, and there's been times when you've said to me, I'd be like, no, I don't really know. And, but you said, but I've talked to them and I know this X, Y, blah, blah, blah. And you have given me a lot more insight on a resume that I would have previously just passed on by looking at it. So if you can just talk a little bit about the benefits, I think there's a lot of benefits in going through a recruiting agency if you're a candidate, and how that you kind of work.
Well, I think, we obviously get paid from the client side, but we represent the candidates, and we've taken the time on our end to really understand their background, who they are as people, because a lot of, I'd say 50% of finding the right candidate is, are they going to be a culture fit? And as a recruiter, you're not sending anyone, you're sending those specific candidates are going to be a culture fit. So when you're pushing for them and you might not see it on paper immediately, you're hearing it from a recruiter. But listen, I know your company, I know the types of people that work at your company. This is the kind of person you're going to want to work with. So I think that really goes a long way, because we've done the vetting not only on the technical side, but on the personality side as well, which is just as important to especially retain your employees too. So there is a huge benefit working through recruiters.
We have a question. I have a LinkedIn page. Could I get some tips to enhance it more?
Absolutely. Just after this call, you can go ahead and send it over to us and we'll take a look and give you pointers.
Great, thank you. Any interview tips that you can share for us?
Yeah, we have interview tips. A lot of interviews right now are still happening on Zoom. So make sure your lighting is good. If you have one of those ring lights, like maybe your daughter loves the selfie type things and they have a ring light, that's a good investment to make. Actually, that's really good. That gives you great lighting. But in terms of just general interview tips, do the research on the company and the interviewer. There's nothing more embarrassing than going into an interview and not understanding what the company is about, what matters to them, and who you're interviewing with. So that should be your number one thing you're doing once you have an interview set up. The other thing, and I know this was a pitfall I heard from a client, not from one of our candidates, on another candidate that they had interviewed. They asked about a particular part of their resume and the candidate was like, oh, I've never done that work before. So for some unknown reason, that candidate had something in their resume they had never actually done or weren't well versed in. So of course, don't lie, but also just know your resume inside and out, because you never know what they're gonna, it might be conversational. And a lot of times these initial interviews are conversational, but as you move down the line and they become more technical, they are going to ask more technical questions. And that's when you need to know your resume inside and out. Another thing we always tell our candidates, keep it concise. The tell me about yourself, that's probably the only exception to the rule. That one probably takes more than a minute, but I'd say in general, keep your answers concise and use examples where you can. Don't talk generally. It should be very specific. Even if it's a general question, tie it into a specific example. I mean, you can pull out examples no matter what. And one thing we always tell our candidates when we prep them, write down a list of 5 proud of highlight career examples and a list of 2 to 3, oh, I wish I would have done better. And then you have a whole, you have a list of 8 to pull from no matter what question you're asked. And then the last one we always tell our candidates is make sure you have well thought out questions, because after an interview, you don't want to be saying, oh no, I'm okay. I don't have any more questions, because certainly you do. So, stay away from pay and flexibility, but, generally you should be asking well thought out questions afterwards.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions that we haven't addressed?
I saw a few come through on the chat regarding Focus Women LinkedIn group. We will include that with a follow-up email after this presentation here. So thank you very much for that question there.
Well, thank you, everyone. Runa and Jasmine, thank you for kicking off our first series for Virtual Women. If you have a company that you would like to spotlight, please let us know. This is what Darlene and I are hoping to do, is just spotlight women in the industry doing great things and helping each other out. This is we can't network in person right now. Hopefully we'll be able to do that more in the summer, but we thank you both for coming, and we're gonna share your email addresses and contact information in a follow-up email to everyone on the call.
Perfect. And thank you both again so much for having us and letting us speak to everybody. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you.
Excellent. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.